On the distant Mexican border, a group of people are crawling on the ground, a sight that the locals are all too familiar with. This is a ritual of worship performed by the faithful. Just then, a brand new Mercedes-Benz pulls up, and out step a pair of bald twins, Marco and Lionel. They are dressed in terrifying skull-faced boots and crisp suits, and though they utter not a single word, their eyes are filled with murderous intent. Their movements are unhurried, yet their purpose is clear. They move like machines, executing an irresistible command that instills pure terror in the viewers. Marco and Lionel join the crawling procession and are the first to reach the holy shrine. The shrine was dedicated to the revered Santa Muerte, the patron saint of Mexican cartels. They believe that Santa Muerte can protect them and help them take their enemies' lives. Marco and Lionel silently recite their prayers before nailing a portrait of their enemy to the curse wall. The portrait is none other than the mysterious Heisenberg. The twin brothers are known as the most ruthless assassins for the Mexican cartel, also named the Cousins. Afterward, Marco and Lionel drive to a civilian's home, where they remove their branded suits and change into someone else's old clothes. They then approach a little girl. Fortunately, no tragedy occurs. Marco and Lionel hand over the car keys to the little girl's family. A few pieces of old clothing in exchange for a Mercedes, quite the bargain indeed. Their change of clothes is to smuggle themselves into the United States to seek vengeance against Walter for their cousin Tuco's death. On Walter's side, he learns that the plane crash was due to an error by air traffic controller Donald, who is Jane's father. Walter feels an immense guilt inside him. Once again, he strikes a match by the poolside. His inaction led indirectly to the loss of hundreds of lives. When only one match remains, he can no longer tolerate his own misdeeds. He suddenly stands up, pours alcohol over the money earned from his artistic endeavors, and sets it ablaze, hoping to burn away the dirty dealings and the moral debt he owes. However, the next second, he regrets it. That's $500,000, money he earned with his life at stake. Walter retrieves all the money from the water, and, being meticulous, he finds the eyeball of a toy from the plane crash in the sewer. At this moment, Hank suddenly arrives, sent by Skylar to help Walter move out. Since it's a matter between the couple, Hank refrains from asking too many questions. He starts by discussing the plane crash and then comforts Walter.
You beat a little tactical retreat, yeah? You regroup, and then, well, absence makes the...
Then Hank helps Walter move his belongings. Just as Walter picks up the bag containing $500,000, Hank grabs the bag from his hands.
No heavy lifting, I got it.
No, it's okay.
I got it. What do you got in there, cinder blocks?
$500,000 in cash.
That made Hank laugh. Walter played another nerve-wracking gambit. Meanwhile, Skylar acts swiftly. She has already consulted a lawyer about the divorce. When the lawyer asks about the couple's assets, Skylar is instantly bewildered. She has no idea how much money Walter has hidden.
You'd be amazed what I've seen partners hide from one another.
After sending Walter away, Skylar moves back home with the children. Walter Jr. misses his dad deeply.
Hey Dad, it's me. No, I'm not okay. I don't know what the hell's going on. Nobody's telling me around here.
Flynn.
Walter Jr. was very upset and didn't understand why his mom had kicked his dad out of the house. He was also cold and distant towards his mom, unwilling to interact with her. Walter Jr. asks his dad to take him to school. After hanging up the phone, Walter looks confusedly at the sandwich on his plate. He strangely cuts off the crusts. Remember when they held Crazy 8 captive? Crazy 8 didn't like eating bread crusts, so Walter always cut them off when making sandwiches for him. Crazy 8 was the first person Walter consciously killed. Now, the habit of cutting off the crusts has continued, as if the sins are scars on his body, destined to follow him for life. Walter cannot redeem his sins. He can only change his approach to seek psychological comfort. In the school, everyone was talking about the tragic and terrifying plane crash, but Walter encouraged everyone to look on the bright side. Firstly, it was a blessing that there were no deaths on the ground. And secondly, the plane wasn't full and it was the 50th largest plane crash in terms of the number of people who died. Don't be too sad. We still have to look forward because people are always forgetful, Walter said. After Walter finished speaking, everyone's faces changed. Carmen quickly took the microphone away from Walter's hand. Actually, what Walter said was not wrong. Humans are indeed forgetful creatures, but at this moment, Walter was not a sage who had seen through reality. He was just deceiving and comforting himself to lessen his intense feelings of guilt. After dropping his son off at the front door of the house, Walter asked Walter Jr. to send his regards to the family. Walter Jr. asked him why he didn't go back himself, saying, "That's your home too, isn't it?" Walter was silent for a while before finally shaking his head, disappointed. Walter Jr. went into the house and started yelling at Skylar.
Why you gotta treat him like this? Why you gotta be like this? Why can't you just talk even?
Marie comforted her sister, saying that Walter Jr. just wanted to know the reason, and actually, Marie wanted to know as well. The hardships of Skylar are ultimately something that others cannot understand. Skylar came to Walter's place, and they faced each other in silence. Skylar was the first to speak. She had come with the divorce papers this time. Walter was surprised and confused. "Are you punishing me?"
Why are you even thinking this way? Is it to punish me?
I am not punishing you, Walt.
This is punitive, is what this is.
You're a drug dealer.
Skylar was smart. She had guessed the general idea. Otherwise, where would Walter have gotten all that money from? This time Walter had no way out, and he finally confessed.
Manufacturer, I'm not a dealer.
Skylar's suspicions were confirmed, but she couldn't accept this reality. Walter hoped Skylar would give him a chance to explain, but at that moment, Skylar didn't want to stay another second. Walter hurriedly stood up to stop Skylar, but she avoided his hand.
I'm gonna make you a deal, Walt. I won't tell Hank, and I won't tell your children, or anybody else. Nobody will hear it from me. But only if you grant me this divorce and stay out of our lives.
No, Skylar.
I mean it.
On the other hand, Jesse was recovering well. He was planting flowers in the rehab center, attending meetings, and receiving psychological guidance, gradually overcoming his pain and kicking his drug addiction. It truly felt like a prodigal son returning. Walter picked him up, and Jesse also learned about the plane crash's connection to Jane. Walter was afraid that he would not be able to think straight again, so he persuaded him that maybe the plane's radar was out of order. Walter was still desperately refusing to accept reality.
Now, I am very up to date on this thing. Probably far more than you are.
You either run from things, or you face them, Mr. White.
What exactly does that mean?
I learned it in rehab. It's all about accepting who you really are.
And who are you?
I'm the bad guy.
It's ironic that a person who isn't all that bad thinks he's a villain, while a person who is thoroughly bad doesn't think he's all that bad. Walter met with Gus and declared that he was washing his hands of the business. What he lacked now was not money but family. Gus then offered a tempting deal, $3 million for 3 months, and although Walter was momentarily swayed, he ultimately declined. Gus didn't try to persuade Walter further and stood up, politely shaking his hand to say goodbye. Meanwhile, on the US-Mexico border, a truck full of hay was heading towards Texas, and its cabin was full of passengers. This was a smuggling vehicle, and the cousins were among them. The boy opposite kept bragging about how it was his 3rd time coming to Texas and how impressive his painting skills were, until he accidentally saw the cousins' boots. He didn't dare to make a sound anymore. The owners of those skull-faced boots had too many terrifying legends attached to them, but unfortunately, it was too late. The cousins decided it was time to kill to silence witnesses. Their menacing expressions, coupled with their unhurried movements, conveyed the brutality of the killers without a single line of dialogue, perfectly capturing the essence of their savagery. Simply because their identities were exposed, they killed everyone in the smuggling vehicle. Hank quickly received photos from the crime scene, and from the investigators' descriptions of the scene, he could deduce the probable cause of the incident. In investigating cases, Hank was like a hound with a keen sense of smell, but he was completely oblivious to Walter's scent. Meanwhile, Walter was leisurely on his way to school when he suddenly noticed a police car following him. After pulling over, he realized that his front windshield was shattered. Driving in such a condition is very dangerous, and the officer didn't hesitate to issue him a ticket. Walter was annoyed and explained that his home was in the debris zone from the plane crash, and he hadn't had time to replace the windshield yet. However, the officer didn't care about these excuses, and seeing Walter so agitated, he resorted to using pepper spray to teach him a lesson. In the end, It was Hank who came forward to bail Walter out. And of course, Walter had to apologize to the police.
Officer, I'm very sorry that I lost my temper. There's no excuse for my behavior. It was disrespectful.
Walter told Hank about his wife wanting a divorce and how Skylar wouldn't allow him to see the kids. Hank was surprised to hear this, but having seen Skylar's temper, he could only shake his head helplessly. Back at the house he rented, the lawyer Saul came to visit because Walter's recent decision to quit the business had caused a severe shortage in the market, significantly reducing Saul's income. Seeing the family problems Walter was facing, Saul assured him not to worry because he was certain that Skylar would not turn Walter in.
It'll be a disaster for her. That DEA brother-in-law, paging Dr. Phil, my daddy's a drug dealer, and my mommy turned him in. And the house, gone. The feds will come and RICO her and the kids out on the street. Oof, good luck arguing with them on that. No, it's not gonna happen. She's bluffing.
Saul's reasoning wasn't without merit, but Walter was worried about his family falling apart. Clearly, Saul didn't understand the real Walter. He even advised Walter not to hang himself on one tree, saying that the world is full of other opportunities, and once he had money, what kind of woman couldn't he find? After going around in circles, Saul finally stated the real reason for his visit, but Walter firmly declared that he didn't want to be a bad guy. Seeing Walter's current state, Saul had to look for another solution. He called Mike to say that Walter's wife was a big problem and asked Mike to find a way to monitor his wife's situation. Meanwhile, Skylar's decision to kick Walter out of the house had caused strong protests from their son.
And his eyes were all red like he's been crying or something. But you don't even care.
Honey,
What? I don't know what your problem is. You may not love him anymore, but I do. Hey, no.
Unexpectedly, Walter Jr. swore at his mother, and Hank, unable to stand by and watch, decided to speak up for Walter.
it's none of your business.
Hank thought Walter had only had an affair, but Marie didn't think so.
If he cheated on her, then she would have told me by now. It just feels like something more.
Clearly, the sisters still had some understanding between them. The next day after school, Walter Jr. didn't go home but went straight to his father's place instead. Skylar's still upset about something at work because she finds out that there's something wrong with the financial statements, and that Ted has been cooking the books. Skylar questioned Ted about how he could justify his actions to his own family. Ted's response also indirectly reflected Walter's inner voice.
I'd say that I might have for you to clear that. But that whatever I did thinking of them. You know, try to take the time to understand. You know what, truth is, I haven't thought that far ahead, Skylar. I'm just trying to keep my head above water, so I better get back to it.
Just then, Walter called, saying that his son had run over on his own and that he wanted to bring him back home, asking for his wife's permission. Actually, Walter also wanted to use this opportunity to go back home, so that Skylar wouldn't hate him. Walter cleaned his mouth and put on some perfume, so it seemed he couldn't wait to get back to his family. What he didn't expect was for Skylar to let his son in and turn him away. Walter begged to be let in, but the stubborn Skylar wouldn't give him a chance. Walter could no longer control his emotions, and in his anger, he threw the pizza onto the roof. It's said that this scene was done in one take by Walter, and it has become one of the iconic scenes of Breaking Bad. In reality, many Breaking Bad fans come here to check in and imitate the scene. A long, lonely night passed, and the desolate Walter lay in the popcorn like a rat, until he was woken up by a ringtone. It turned out to be Skylar calling.
When I went out this morning to get the newspaper, I saw a pizza on our roof. Would you know anything about that? Your distance. If you can't manage that, I will get a restraining order.
Skylar!
Skylar finished the call and prepared to go to work, but what she didn't know was that she was already being watched. After they left, Mike quietly sneaked into the house to install a bug. Coincidentally, Walter also took advantage of Skylar's absence to move back in, but to his utter surprise, the locks had been changed by his wife, which infuriated him so much that he punched the door. Mike heard the noise and became alert. All the windows were also securely locked, so Walter had to crawl in through the basement crawl space. Unexpectedly, he had to return home in such a manner, which was truly heartbreaking. After installing the bug, Mike was ready to leave, but just then, a car stopped at Walter's front door, and out came the cousins who had just smuggled in. It turned out they had confirmed Walter was Heisenberg based on the clues provided by Tio. Seeing the two men carrying axes, Mike hurriedly made a phone call. It turned out Mike's real employer was Gus, and faced with the situation, he could only report to his boss. At this moment, the cousins had already entered the house. Walter, who was taking a shower, was completely unaware that death was already upon him.